in an oddity, there's 11 games on Friday today, and there's 6 games tomorrow on Saturday. It's weird. But it'll allow us some time to watch hockey tonight and then talk about hockey tomorrow. Yvonne and I are going out to watch Star Wars again today, which means that this may be the only video I have time for this morning. We'll get some more video goodness later. The lights do seem to be flickering on and off here or there. Hopefully we don't lose power, but there was freezing rain yesterday, and it could happen. Alright, let's get things started before the power does in fact go out. You've got Buffalo and New Jersey. The Buffalo Sabres 9-20-8 almost mirror the record of the New Jersey Devils 22-9-5. And mirror is a term that gets thrown around a lot, but a mirror technically reverses everything. So when you say the two teams mirror each other, they're opposite, not the same. They're the same, you just say they have the same record, not that they mirror each other. Because every time I hear mirror each other, I think, okay, so they're opposite. Thus, in this case, mirroring is right. For Buffalo, much like the Arizona Coyotes, it's about playing for pride. And for New Jersey, it's about putting the hammer down and striking while the iron's hot. And Schneider's starting tonight. It's likely Leonard for Buffalo. I can't see them starting Johnson. For New Jersey, it's a home game against the lowest ranked team in the East. You really got to win this one, because it is the Metro. There are a lot of teams waiting to catch up, and there are a lot of teams with really good records just waiting for any kind of bobble from New Jersey, and Jersey really doesn't want to provide that with a loss at home against Buffalo. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here, but again, with Corey Schneider, with the youth that they've got in the lineup, with the talent that Jersey has, I can't see them losing this one at home. Just can't see it. Okay. And you got Columbus and Ottawa. So Columbus has been suffering from some rather poor results lately, and Ottawa's in the midst of another 4-game losing streak. Any talk of them having turned it around is gone again. And I'm starting to wonder how soon it's going to be when Duchesne starts feeling the brunt of it. Because they had a decent record at the time of the trade, and since the trade it's been a disaster. And Condon starting tonight against, it's likely Bobrovsky for Columbus. Since it's in Ottawa, I'll give Ottawa a fair chance to win this one. And the fact that I think Erik Karlsson's feeling a little better. I don't know. He's still not producing like Erik Karlsson. And when Erik Karlsson isn't producing, and the fact that Ottawa's still heavily leaning on him on that blue line, it just makes the whole team sag a little bit more. I'm really kind of surprised at how often he's out there. And if anybody's going to say, well, what else are you going to do? I mean, he's their best defenseman. The problem being, he's not been their best defenseman since the injury. And if I had a dime for every time I've watched somebody poke check him at the blue line and then outrace him to the puck and outrace him to the net, so basically a breakaway or a 2-on-1 taking place because Karlsson can't keep that puck in at the blue line, I'd be a rich man. It's been happening a lot. So Ottawa's got issues, and Columbus has issues as well. Columbus tonight's going in against the second lowest ranked team in the East, ahead of only Buffalo, and trying to lay another loss in their lap. And we'll see what happens there. But I honestly, at this point, it's just disheartening to watch Ottawa. They are not the same team. I can't. And it's funny because Guy Boucher said they're not disheartened and they're not disinterested in this season. Okay, but it certainly looks like in the results and the way the team's playing that they're not upbeat. They're not feeling good about themselves, and they're not playing with any sort of confidence. These are issues. As much as a person might want to say, hey, they haven't given up, they're playing like a team that has. Okay, moving on to happier times with the New York Rangers, who are 20-13-4, in against the 13-16-7 Detroit Red Wings. Howard is likely. Lundqvist is confirmed. I personally see the Rangers winning this, but that being said, Detroit isn't getting killed, and I mentioned this in a video a couple days ago. When Detroit plays, they're losing by a goal. There's unlucky plays happening to them. They're not getting blown out. They're a player or two away from being a pretty good team. The problem is that player or two that they're away are prospects they haven't drafted yet, whether it's Dahlin or Svechnikov or whoever they get, and likely one of their prospects who's in the minors and juniors who has yet to come up. Detroit is missing that little bit extra talent that they're going to need to get over the hump, which is why they're here, and the Rangers are coming in looking for another win, again, to keep up in the very competitive, very strong Metro Division. And they're doing it, though, with Chris Kreider. I didn't do a video specifically on Chris Kreider. Chris Kreider had a blood clot in his arm. Has a blood clot in his arm. He's out indefinitely. There's no clue on when he'll be back. They don't know if they're going to have to perform surgery on it. They don't know what they're going to have to do with it. But blood clots like this are life-threatening. They can happen to pretty darn near anybody, and when they happen, they have to be dealt with. Player can't play, because if that blood clot moves, and yeah. Anyways, I don't want... It's a scary incident. I'm glad Chris Kreider's okay right now, and I wish him a speedy recovery, but the Rangers will miss him. The Rangers will miss him greatly in that lineup. There's some other guys who can step up, certainly. It does provide more of an opportunity for other players. There have been fans who've complained about how Alain Vigneault has deployed his troops to this point in the year. Now, with one of his main guys down, he's going to have to put more trust in, hopefully, one of the players that the fans want to see, rather than arguing for the return of Tanner Glass or something along those lines. It'll be interesting to see how this turns out, because it'll be their first full game without Kreider, knowing he's not coming back anytime soon. Philly is in Tampa. So you lose to Florida, now you get Tampa. This has kind of become a theme now. And Florida's kind of turning into what California's been for a very long time. Florida's turning into the death valley that California's been for road teams for a long time. And, you know, if Florida if they can maintain what they're doing now and become a really good team, then Florida and Tampa can make hay off of back-to-back games teams are coming in with. And tonight, Tampa, who's also on a back-to-back, gets Philly off of a loss to Florida. The good news for Tampa is they're coming off of a win against Montreal. And so they feel confident enough to likely put Budaj in net tonight against, it's likely going to be Elliott for Philly. This is where you start wondering, is Philly going to run Elliott into the ground because they don't trust Neuwirth? And that would be a real issue. If you were going to play Neuwirth in this back-to-back, you would have played him last night, I would think. You're not going to save Elliott for the Panthers and give Neuwirth to Tampa unless you're conceding 2 points to Tampa, which no coach in his right mind would do, right? So it's probably Elliott again. So is Philly's plan to play Elliott into the ground? Because this is not something that ends well. Ask Calgary fans about it. If you play Elliott too much, he does tend to spoil. And Tampa enjoys dealing with the spoils of others. And they are the best team in the league. And I know there's fans in Vegas who would take issue with that. And I know there's fans in a couple other cities who would take issue with that. But in my eyes, Tampa's still the best team in the league. They were just cruising along. And that cruising shows no signs of stopping even a little bit. All right. So we have an interesting matchup here. And if I get the chance to watch this game tonight, I will. And when I say if I get the chance, remember, all of these games, most of them are on at the same time. And I'm trying to watch as much as I can as one person. And so I'm going to try to watch this one, because I'm interested to see can Carolina keep it up? Can Cam Ward keep it up? If Jarry plays for Pittsburgh and plays really, really well and they steal a game against Carolina, is that going to put pressure on Pittsburgh to play Jarry more and Murray less? It was kind of scoffed at the time that I would say that Jarry could threaten Murray's status as #1 goalie. Remember, Pittsburgh's just trying to make the Stanley Cup final. The last year that the New York Islanders won the Stanley Cup, which was 1983, Billy Smith ended up giving up some ground to Rolly Melanson, young goaltender coming up. And during that season, there was some talk about maybe Melanson was the starter and maybe it was time for Smith to step aside because Melanson was really good. Billy Smith was a veteran of many years, and they'd won 3 straight Stanley Cups. The idea that a goaltender's won 2 Stanley Cups could end up being a backup at some point isn't really that strange, because goaltending, more than any other position in hockey, is what have you done for me lately? If Jarry gives Pittsburgh a better chance to win, if Jarry's record is better than Matt Murray's, his numbers are better, and if he wins games like this, where they're on the road against Carolina, a team that's on, upcoming, they're getting better. If Jarry can turn the tide tonight and put in a really, really solid game against Carolina, the argument in favor of Jarry being the starter gains more momentum, more interest and more momentum. He's 5-2-2 coming into today. If he can make that 6-2-2, it's not that Murray's playing badly. It's just if you win more with one goalie than another, that goalie will start getting more opportunities to prove himself. That's just the way it works. All right, Nashville. And I don't mean to just gloss over Carolina either. They're playing very, very well. Like I said, they're playing very well, and it's Pittsburgh's chance to stop them. Now, Nashville, it's likely Rene against the returning Devin Dubnyk. Dubnyk has been missed by Minnesota, not as much as expected. Stalock played relatively well. He held the fort. He did his best. And they're 19-15-3 at the time of the return of Devin Dubnyk. Whereas Nashville's at 22-9-5. Now, if they win this one, they move to 43 points. They start getting themselves within striking distance of one of the big 3, which is Nashville, St. Louis, and Winnipeg. If they lose this one in regulation, there's more frustration. But there's good news in that, and I'll get to this team in a bit, one of their prime rivals appears to be ready to just drop out. Minnesota is capable of being a playoff team, the same as they were last year. And with Dubnyk back, I think they're going to get better. I think we're going to end up with possibly a 4 or 5 horse race at the top of that division. And we may see the other 2 teams falling off, not because they're playing badly, well, one of them is, but because this division is just solid. Really, really solid. This is one of those games, they can't have this be a 3-point game. If they beat Nashville in overtime, that'd be a nice story, but it still gives Nashville a point. They need to win this one in regulation. And for Nashville, you don't want Minnesota to get more confidence. You want to put the boots to them while you can. So I would watch for them to try to score early and maybe get in Dubnyk's head a little bit, considering he's just coming back from injury. Good luck with that, but that's what they're going to try to do. Now, the Islanders are in Winnipeg, and the Islanders have become an interesting story in that, a month ago we were talking about how good they were. Every time I did a power rankings, I talked about how they were playing some of the best hockey in the league. They were within shouting distance being number 1 on that board, and everything looked great. And now it's just kind of fallen apart because goaltending. I don't understand how the New York Islanders can have goaltending problems every year while they have a goaltender as their GM. And I'm looking at you too, Ron Hextall. I'm not letting you off the hook, but you haven't been on the job as long as Garth Snow. And really, I don't know that the Islanders have had anything less than goaltending issues since they traded out Roberto Luongo and drafted Rick DiPietro. Evgeny Nabokov notwithstanding, and if somebody can say, well, Nabokov was good. Yeah, but he didn't want to be with the Islanders when they first brought him in either. When the Islanders claimed Nabokov, he refused to go there. So there's been problems with the Islanders goaltending for a very, very long time. There's been a lack of a true starter, a star goaltender, and right now the price they pay for this could be a playoff spot. And in Winnipeg, Hellebuck's confirmed Greiss is likely, but at this point it doesn't really matter. They're the 2 ultimate Jekyll and Hyde goaltenders right now, and they both want to be the starter. They fought to keep Berube in the lineup last year with the idea of maybe trading out Halak. That didn't work. So now Halak and Greiss are fighting it out again. And Berube's moved on to Chicago, where he's not played particularly well when he was called upon. But again, we'll get to the Blackhawks in a minute. With the Jets, they're at home. Their home record is fantastic. Their road record is iffy, but at home they're fantastic. And I would expect a Winnipeg win tonight. Winnipeg really needs to just sort of pounce on whatever the Islanders give them, and be very careful, because if this game's tied late, Barzal, Bailey, Ladd, Tavares, there's a lot of weapons there that can hurt you late in the game. So if Winnipeg's going to win this, they have to have a lead after 2. If this is tied after 2, I would guess that the Islanders will come through and win it. They're sort of like Vegas without goaltending that way. That Vegas just sort of lets you have a lead, and if they hang around and keep it close, and then all of a sudden, oh, they won. What? Wait, they won? How? What? They won again? That kind of thing. The Islanders are capable of that too. It's just they don't have a Marc-Andre Fleury in that. Now, moving on to St. Louis and Dallas. So I've been hesitant to jump on any kind of Dallas Stars bandwagon this year. Even when they were winning, I was like, but I have problems with their defense. Their goaltending's been inconsistent. And I've taken some slings and arrows from other Dallas Stars fans, but I still have that issue. The good news is they're at home, and much like Winnipeg, when they're at home, they're pretty darn good. On the road, not as much. St. Louis has been struggling. St. Louis has had a rough few weeks. And Allen's the likely starter. Bishop is the starter for Dallas. If Dallas is going to get into the conversation, tonight's a good night to do it. Get into that top 4 conversation, because Minnesota has a chance to do it here. Minnesota's 2 points back of Dallas. Now, if Minnesota wins and Dallas loses in regulation, they're going to have the identical records. And identical records going forward with a healthy Minnesota team, I would favor Minnesota over Dallas. Dallas needs to make sure they stay ahead of Minnesota, and they stay at least within shouting distance of teams ahead of them. 48 points is where St. Louis is. Dallas is at 43. So those 4-point swings, if you win or lose in regulation, it's a huge difference. And Dallas really needs to get on a run. Now that St. Louis is showing some signs of weakness, and Winnipeg has played great, bad, Dallas, if they can get any kind of consistency, can likely rein in these two teams faster than this one. I know Nashville's had their struggles lately too, but with that roster, yeah, it's just, I still think Nashville's the best team in the West. I know Vegas is there right now, but I still think that Nashville's the best team in the West. But we'll see. Because Vegas has been pretty darn good themselves. I didn't think anybody would expect that. I really didn't. Just like nobody expected, I was going to say the Spanish Inquisition, but it's a young crowd, so they may not get the reference. Let's move on to Chicago and Edmonton, and away from the Spanish Inquisition. The Blackhawks are 17-14-5. The Oilers are 17-18-2. And this is a fun one. So Edmonton's won 4 of 5, and even though they lost their last game, I think they'll feel okay about the fact that it was against Winnipeg, and it was a 1-goal loss, and it was a good game. It was an entertaining game. They lose it. Talbot's likely starter tonight against Forsberg. That Chicago team that came through Vancouver last night. Now, I know they've played some bad games. I know the 4-0 loss to Dallas was bad, and I know they've had some bad ones. But that was Letterkenny coach garbage can kicking embarrassing last night against Vancouver, and Forsberg is going to take a lot of flack for it. But he's no Corey Crawford, because very, very few goalies are. And I would be very surprised if Edmonton doesn't win this. Chicago doesn't look anything like the team that won the Stanley Cup 3 times. They don't look anything like it. And I've mentioned it before, but man, trading out Panarin still seems so silly to me. Panarin just was fantastic in Chicago. And I understood, and I still understand, that losing in the first round in 4 straight, and losing in the first round 2 years in a row, something's got to give. But Panarin wasn't the problem. And bringing back Saad, it may give you warm and fuzzy feelings, but if you miss the playoffs, those feelings don't really make you feel any better. This team is getting older, and people talk a lot about windows, like, oh, this team's window's closed, this team's window's opening. I don't talk about that because I don't really believe in it. I think you're good enough to win or you're not. I don't care about windows. You're either good enough to win or you're not. Chicago hasn't been for the last 2 springs. And this team right now doesn't look good enough to even make it into the playoffs. I've mentioned up here Minnesota, Nashville, St. Louis, Dallas, and of course, you know, we've got with those 4. Yeah, I just don't see Chicago being able to do it. And Winnipeg, there's the 5th. Because for Chicago to make the playoffs, one of these 5 have to fall behind Chicago. So you've got Nashville, who aren't going to fall behind Chicago. Winnipeg, it's not going to happen. Unless they go on a massive losing streak. Same for St. Louis. So you've got Dallas and Minnesota. Minnesota's just got healthy. They've become a much better team since they got healthy. And Dallas, who may be inconsistent, but they're still better than Chicago to this point in the season. Edmonton, on the other hand, is one of the hotter teams in the West. And they're 1 game away from getting back to 500. You know, that record they were before the loss to Winnipeg. I really can't see Chicago winning this game. I can't. That Chicago team last night, that was not Chicago. I'm convinced that they've been replaced by some kind of army of the dead, or maybe they've been maybe there's some kind of a body snatcher thing going on there with Chicago. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that aliens have taken over the Blackhawks and rendered them harmless, but I'm not saying that hasn't happened either. So look into it. Toronto and Colorado. This is interesting. A game that you can kind of look at from a Toronto perspective and say, well, this is going to be a winner for Toronto. And that's understandable. They're coming off of a 7-4 win over Arizona. The same Arizona team that beat Colorado a couple days ago. The thing is, Varlamov is likely the starter, and it looks like Calvin Pickard is going to get the start. Calvin Pickard's first game playing for anybody other than Colorado. And where is it? It's in Colorado. Against Colorado. I'll be very interested to see how he does. Because the question's always one of, does the goalie have a book on the shooters, or do the shooters have a book on the goaltender? So you spend all that time with the team, and the team spends all that time with you. Who really has the advantage? And in some cases, you'll see a goaltender get peppered badly by a team that he used to play for. And in others, the team that he played for can't score on him. That'll be a very interesting matchup. The 23-14-1 Toronto Maple Leafs are a better team than the 17-16-3 Colorado Avalanche. But the Avs have had this track record of a good game after a bad one. They're coming off that loss against Arizona. There's got to be some concern about dropping back to 500. While all of these aforementioned teams are doing really well, I would expect a big game from Colorado early. I would expect them to try to jump on a tired Toronto team. And we'll see. Because Toronto also, well, they had 7 goals last night. Toronto's offense has been really inconsistent as well. If Colorado can put a goal or 2 in on Toronto early, and have Toronto kind of doubting themselves just a little bit, Colorado can absolutely win this game. If I had to go with an upset of the night, Colorado might be it. They're at home. Toronto just won a game last night. It's a back-to-back. It's Pickard's first game in the NHL this year. Maybe jitters become an issue because it's his first game against any team other, playing for any team other than Colorado, and it's against Colorado. We'll see. But and Varlamov's numbers, while they haven't been great, I honestly think that's Colorado's defense more than it's Varlamov. Varlamov with a .909 save percentage. Yeah, it could be better, but it's Colorado. Colorado's really, yeah, they're the Avs. So while they're going to destroy the 48-point mark they had last year, that's not going to happen again. They're still not a playoff team. There's still a lot to work on, And boy, if these guys somehow won the draft lottery and got Rasmus Dahlin, next year we could talk about Colorado being a playoff team, because that really bolsters that blue line quite a bit. But I'm getting way ahead of myself on that one. Calgary. In Anaheim. Again. Smith's the starter. Gibson's the likely starter for Anaheim. Doesn't matter. Does it matter who's playing for Anaheim tonight? Like, Kessler's back now. And Getzlaf's playing. But does it matter? See, Anaheim's 16-14-8. Calgary's 18-15-4. There's been a break. Calgary, the last time they went to Anaheim, finally won a game in Anaheim. The curse is over. Or is it? Because one win looks great unless you lose that next one. And then you say they've only won one out of X amount of visits to Anaheim. To break free of whatever curse may have been perceived, and I don't believe in curses, except for the Canucks, they're cursed. But the Flames need another win tonight. They're coming off of a loss against San Jose. This is Death Valley now. And they need to win against an Anaheim team who's probably going to be pretty ornery after losing at home against Vegas. And they don't want to fall out of the race themselves. So for Calgary and for Smith, this is a key game. They want to go 4 games above 500 and drive these guys down to 1 game above 500. Whereas if Anaheim can get the win, Calgary might be in deep trouble. And I'm trying to avoid saying that because I still see the Flames as a pretty good team. I don't understand why they're struggling as much as they are. I think there's a little bit of issue with their depth at forward, but like Bennett got another assist last night. Bennett's picked it up. Jankowski's played well. There's maybe it's just a matter of, if Ferland is in your top 6, maybe there just is a lack of a top 6 forward there. Maybe they need another top 6. But whatever they need, they have to figure it out, because losing to Anaheim tonight and going behind the Ducks, it's just going to make it that much harder. So if they beat the Ducks tonight, they can do themselves a favor. I'd be very surprised if they don't. I don't care about curses. I don't care about who's got a good record where necessarily. But, this Flames-Ducks thing is kind of silly. And I'm kind of expecting the Flames to win this one tonight. Maybe in overtime. Because once the Ducks get to overtime, they don't have a tremendous record. But no matter what they have to do to win this, I'm kind of expecting Calgary to win it, because it's silly, the whole curse thing. That being said, now that I've said it, they'll probably lose. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through and you just happened upon this video. And thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.